one of the things I'm going to share with you tonight is we need to touch base here on our disclaimer. That's important. Just so you know, I am not here to diagnose, treat, or cure anything. My job is to share with you information, and that is what I'm doing. So we're going to move on to our information. I'm going to let you know, again, welcome. It is exciting to have you all here. I thank you for joining, for those of you that are interested in working on anxiety and mental health holistically. That means a lot to me. We're very motivated within our practice of Access Complete Wellness to do what we can to help folks with dealing and removing unnecessary stress, and preferably without the added pressure of prescription meds. That's always sometimes brings on a lot of extra details that you have to think about. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Lynn Morales. I'm a naturopath and a wellness specialist in the DFW area. So I want to welcome you. Not everybody on this webinar is from the DFW area, so we welcome you from all time zones. And we are so glad to have you here. Just so you know, we are going to be sharing a lot of links with you on our presentation. Our sources, there are pages of them. I'm going to show them to you. And so bottom line is, what we want to make sure of is that you do not feel any anxiety about writing all this down. What we're going to do is send you all the links that are part of this webinar tonight. You can see here's a whole nother page too. And we're going to send you all of those links as a participant for this webinar, and that will include the playback of this class as well. So the goal then would be to have you sit back and relax and not stress over, are you going to get this information or be able to access it later or not. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a moment to kick this off. By the way, I'd like you to be sure to notice the chat. The chat field is something where you can ask questions. We are going to deal with questions at the very end, so we can kind of flow through the presentation. And then if you have any questions, if for some reason we run out of time and you don't get to them, please hang tight. What we'll do is we'll make sure we get those questions answered and at least email them back out to you. So for those of you that are accustomed to dealing with anxiety, it will come as no surprise to know that it's one of the most commonly experienced mental illnesses among adults in America. It affects around 40 million plus people a year, and that's about 18% of our population. So that's a really big concern across our population base. And yet the curious thing about it is that it actually, only 36% of those who suffer from it actually seek help. So that tells us a few things. One of the things is that anxiety as an issue is maybe not taken seriously enough by those who don't suffer from it, to correctly assist those who do. And another is that there may be some surrounding issues around the actual support that people receive around it. And so if you or somebody that you love has ever been prescribed like drugs or anything like that to help you fight anxiety, you'll know that medication has varying levels of success in combating the symptoms. Some people, it's got positive results, which is wonderful. For some others, though, it just doesn't work. And so for that small percentage, though, who see results, that's a good thing. But, what about those who don't? So we hope tonight that what we'll be sharing with you is some information that will be helpful on your journey or the journey of someone that you care about. So actually, 65% of anxiety sufferers in America currently take prescribed drugs daily. and 43% take them regularly. So it's interesting to consider this large percentage of people who take the drugs, given that the stats also show that only 10% of those who suffer are receiving adequate treatment. So that's some pretty interesting statistics. So we are going to share with you some statistics on anxiety and a lot of research studies. Again, that will come in the presentation package that we'll release in a few days. So what we want to talk about in this presentation, though, is holistic health. It's becoming increasingly popular. And so basically one of the things that, you know, as ideas around this, you know, there's many ideas worth spreading. And the concept of treating imbalances and diseases or supporting them, such as anxiety, with, you know, holistic methods is actually something that's coming to, you know, a firm and reliable basis, but it actually dates back to thousands of years, that some of these things that we're going to share with you. So you may not actually know what holistic healthcare is. So I'm going to take a moment to cover that and make sure that we're all on the same page. So we're just going to level set for a second. So basically holistic healthcare takes into account, you know, all the varying aspects of life and the individual as potential causes and remedies to the concern here. So basically it means that all aspects, but physical, mental, emotional, social, and spiritual health all contribute to the overall well-being of a person. And so much of modern day healthcare focuses on, quote unquote, attacking the illness, as opposed to creating overall health. And holistic healthcare is what we're focused on, and looking at some more wholesome approaches to doing that and sustaining better health. So, you know, there are really very few imbalances of the body and the mind that actually can't be treated with holistic remedies. You know, and so those who suffer from anxiety are no exception. And so basically, as awareness of mental health issues, you know, like anxiety, continue to spread, experts around the world are starting to begin to study some of these holistic health measures. And again, that's one of the reasons we have so many evidence-based research studies to share with you on this topic. One of the things I'm going to share with you is we have a website, accesscompletewellness.com. And out there on our resources page, again, we will send this link to you. But we actually have an emotional questionnaire. A lot of people, if you're in my practice, you've used it. But if you're not familiar with what we do, it's a questionnaire that asks you several different questions. And what you do is, it actually is recommending a natural option called flower essences. Flower essences are one of my favorites. It's actually what I started my training with. And I use them with children. I use them with pets. They're very, very effective. They work very quickly. And you can actually drop a few drops under your tongue or put some in your water, drink it throughout the day. But the emotional questionnaire on our website actually will allow you you can go take it for free. You can pick up they're called Bach, B-A-C-H, flower essences. You can pick them up at Sprouts or Whole Foods. Or if you're near our office location, we have them as well. There are 38 different ones, which is why the questionnaire is so important, because it kind of helps you zero in, and the instructions are there to help you out with that. So just wanted to share that with you, you know, a freebie that you can go out and kind of take a look at that option for you. Now, one of the things, you know, you probably hear a lot about is diet and anything health related, especially from people like me. And so this presentation will be no exception to that rule. And I know it always says, oh, what not to eat, and that's just like such a bummer. But trust me, I do have the slide that tells you what you can eat, and that's always more exciting to me because I really like food. So let's talk a little bit about this, because most people do not really get how important diet really is. And it is a huge contributing factor to the holistic healthcare scene. And so you want to eat foods that promote a healthy body and a healthy mind. And that's just that's just the facts to, achieving physical and mental health. But in terms of anxiety, there are actually certain foods which really accentuate and relieve the symptoms of this, disorder. And so depending on the severity though, always keep that in mind, with these symptoms and a person's health, a holistic practitioner is generally going to recommend removing some of these foods. And let's talk through what those are right now. Some of the foods, and you might not like this, is caffeine. That's one of them. Also refined sugars and even some certain fruits that have a lot of high sugar in them. Some of those are not always the best. Hydrogenated oils. So when you want to, what are those? Well, think fried. That's what you want to think when you're thinking hydrogenated oils. Also, things like fast food, that's not always the best, especially a lot of the wheat that's out there these days. High sodium foods are not your best choice. And then trans fats. So that's going to be things like margarine, shortening that you use for baking. Those are not some of your better fats. Also processed foods. That would be, the foods that have a shelf life of infinity. So those are usually your processed foods. And then of course, soy, and also alcohol. So, I know some of these aren't the fun things that you want to eliminate from your diet. But again, these are things that, maybe you want to keep a food diary on and kind of notice, how your anxiety levels may go up or down with some of those types of foods in your diet. So now, yay, on to the foods we love, the foods that are really, really good for us. And it seems like the list of foods containing elements that can prove triggering for anxiety is endless. But it is possible to eat, a healthy, balanced diet. And I'm kind of a big fan of everything in moderation. But there are some foods that actually kind of help calm the state of mind. And so I'm going to share with you foods like root vegetables, right? Those would be, your red beets, your carrots, rutabagas. Those are root vegetables. Those are generally good and very grounding, kind of interesting since they're so deep in the ground there with their roots. And they offer very soothing properties, and they actually help ease the effects of cortisol. Cortisol is a very triggering stress hormone. And we do a lot of work with that in my practice with a modality called Body Talk. But here's a way that you can address it or help not raise its levels by watching some of these foods. And so let's get into this list because it's very, very important to understand what can help reduce some of that stress hormone called cortisol. And that's going to be things rich in B vitamins, which we're going to talk about shortly, antioxidants, and then omega-3 fatty acids, which are super, super vital for brain function. We actually do a test in our office called Brain Span. It's actually a blood stick test. It actually will measure your omega-3 fatty acids of your brain. And I'm so excited, very excited. Not only, I just had a great week last week with all that happened. And one of the great things is I received my Brain Span test back after 90 days and all markers are in the green now. I am so excited. So I'm a living testimony that Brain Span test works and that the protocol that we're using works. But here's some other ways you can get omega-3s. Wild salmon, of course, is one way. Good things like nuts and different seeds are good for you. But let me tell you some off the omegas. Let's go into the foods that are really good to eat, like blueberries on the screen. That was pretty obvious. But we also have things like almonds. Spinach is very good, broccoli, spirulina. If you don't know what that is, that's a blue-green algae. Yes, a lot of people like to put that in their smoothies. And then, of course, we have raspberries are really good. I love to put raspberries and blueberries in my smoothies each day. Dark chocolate. Now that's a fun one, right? It's a good food. It's good for anxiety and tastes good. So I like it. Quinoa, red lentils, those are all some great superfoods. Some of these are actually superfoods. And so that means that they trigger higher levels of beneficial nutrients, minerals, vitamins, and those are all super great holistic sources for anxiety reducing aspects. So can't go wrong with the list that we just talked about. So moving on to our B vitamins. I told you we'd talk a little bit more about this. And, you know, B vitamins are kind of considered your happy hormone vitamin or happy hormone foods. You know, these vitamins are so great at, you know, reducing effects of anxiety. Green vegetables like asparagus, spinach, avocados, that's good. Avocados are just some of the foods you can include in your diet to start combating these effects of these high levels of cortisol. Again, cortisol is a big trigger in this whole anxiety scenario. So important, B vitamins and folic acid can also be found for you meat eaters out there, because do not hear that I'm just like a vegetarian or something, because I'm not. But you can also find it in beef, chicken, leafy greens, legumes, oranges, citrus fruits, rice, nuts, eggs. Those are all excellent sources of the B vitamins. And so, so some people ask, well, how many B vitamins do I need and which ones? You may not realize it. There's actually 8 forms of B vitamins. The B1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 9 through 12, right? We've got, quite a few there. And so, it just depends. Each person's different. And for you to think that what works for the guy next door is going to work for you would be a very bad assumption. The reason is you're different. You're unique. Your diet may not look like that person's. So it's important to have an opportunity to know, well, what's really the right B for me? And so another opportunity, again, we will provide this link. We do have a nutrition assessment that we offer, and especially to those of you on our webinars, and there's no cost to do this. We need a little bit of information from you ahead of time to process it, but it's a great way to get to the bottom of what might be going on with your, what might be the best B vitamin for you based on how you respond to this online survey. So just letting you know that a nutrition assessment is available. We call it the system survey because it looks at what body systems you may have running a little deficient. And we figure that out by how you answer those questions. But how do you even know if you are B vitamin deficient? Well, here's a couple of symptoms and signs that might indicate that. One is fatigue. Another one is headaches, nervousness, irritability, anxiety. Another one is cramps. People don't always put B vitamins with cramps, but definitely cramps could be a part of it. Maybe even tingling in your hands and your feet. And we can't forget nausea. Nausea is another one that very much may be a sign. And that actually has more to do with your gut than anything else. And we are going to talk about that. You guys are going to be so smart on anxiety when we're done with this. But we're going to talk about that shortly. But before we move on, I have to share with you my favorite all-time helper for anxiety. This is my favorite friend, Kava Forte. It's an amazing herb that I like to use. It's very helpful in stressful times. I actually think I needed one at that basketball game recently that I was telling you about. I think I had to take one. Or Keith's very good at bringing me these when he might recognize I'm feeling anxious about things. So, he's really great for that. So anyway, this is through a product line called Metis Herb, and that's sold through health practitioners. But again, if you are interested in anything like that, I can help you with that, but would want you to take that free nutrition assessment that we talked about, because that's super, super important, so I understand the full picture of what's going on with you. So let's talk about traditional Chinese medicine. Now, I abbreviate this TCM because that's kind of a mouthful to say all that. But we're going to talk a little bit about this. Do you know actually that medical schools are starting to get a little interested in this? I'm excited. I was working with my vet recently with my pet, and was able to share with her why a certain prescription that she does have him on right now would work at a better time of day. And that's what you call Chinese medicine. And I'm going to show you a little bit about what we call the Chinese medicine clock, or your 24-hour body clock, in just a minute. Another great resource. But she was fascinated with that. She's like, huh, that makes perfect sense based on, you know, how that clock works. So, but let's talk a little bit about this. So, you know, the origin of a lot of holistic remedies and treatments that we actually have in the Western world today actually comes from the examples set by ancient Chinese herbalists. And these, you know, these people relied on nature and their own understanding of the human body and mind in order to, you know, prevent and support, you know, people that have certain ailments. And so, you know, their focus was on the prevention or the onset of a disease. And that's where, you know, we saw the great, you know, you can see the greatest effect because there's so many stories actually of herbalists and medicine men, if you will, that lived well past their average life expectancy in the, you know, generations before us in their era. And it's simply because, you know, they followed herbally supplemented and longevity boosting lifestyles, which is a testament to the power of these remedies. But I'm going to share with you an article, it'll be part of the links that we share, but it's an interesting article. I think it was put out around 2010. And one of the things that it did is it talked about how the Chinese emperors back in the day, who had direct access to certain remedies and you know, money, power, exposure to any treatment they needed or wanted, and yet their life expectancy, their lifespan was decades shorter than the same, you know, monks or medicine men of that era. And so what they concluded in the article, that it really had nothing to do with your means and what you had, you know, how wealthy or powerful you were, that it had everything to do with how you took responsibility for your own health. And so it's a fascinating article, and we'll share that in our links. So one of the things, you know, when you take responsibility and interest in your own health and lifestyle, you know, you start to read these case studies and you start to realize that, you know, you have responsibility here. And it's really important, you know, to look at things, but make sure you do it from your individual needs, because again, you're very unique. And so it's important to cultivate you know, awareness in your own body. You know, do you feel good when you eat this berry, or do you feel better when you eat that one, right? And understanding, I have a blog on my website, and it's called Awaken the Sleeping Giant. It's actually talking about an essential oil, but there's a paragraph in there I talk about things to notice, you know, because your body's talking to you all the time. So, but let me take you to our Chinese clock. All right, so this is the 24-hour body clock. You can see here it's on our website. You get free access to it. It's very, very neat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go out to the body clock here. It's going to bring in my website. There you go. Again, you're going to get this link, so nobody be anxious. So this is that 24-hour body clock, you know, like when you travel to another part of the world and then you have jet lag. This is the body clock, and this explains why the jet lag happens. So let me show you how this works. So I'll just give you a quick overview. So have you ever noticed that maybe there's a certain time of day that maybe you get really sleepy? And that's one of those awareness things I would love you to get in tune with. Maybe you're a person who gets sleepy every afternoon between 3 and 5 o'clock. Or maybe you're the person who doesn't sleep well between 3 and 5 o'clock in the morning, right? So let me show you how this clock works. So if you have a particular time of day that's kind of on your mind now, because you're like, oh yeah, by the way, every night at 7 o'clock, I have this huge power drain. What's happening, right? And you just thought you had a long day at work. The reality is it probably has a lot to do with this thing we call Chinese medicine. So let's act like you're the person who doesn't sleep very well, 3 to 5 a.m. in the morning. So we got it clicked here on AM, right? And you go over here and you highlight, and you should see the lungs highlighting. This is telling you that in that 24-hour body clock, every 2 hours of the full 24-hour body clock, the body has a different organ that's cleansing, so to speak. So if you're a person who wakes up every night between 3 and 5 o'clock, your lungs are trying to send you a message. And it's not a bad thing. Don't think the worst or anything. That's not what this is about. This is about giving you information. So what you do here is you pick the time of day that's of interest to you, and then you go click on the lungs, and it'll open up my blog. And this is a blog. Originally it was titled "Is Your Hose Kinked?" That's the original article, but then I did a series on every time on that clock. And so this article will start to tell you a little bit more about what does 3 to 5 o'clock mean, and what might you need to work on. And I'm just going to be honest, 3 to 5 o'clock also has a lot to do with grief. I've been having a difficult time with this time, and I'm working through grief. Many of you know I lost some very significant people in my life in the last 9 months. 6 to 9 months. I lost a pet too. They're significant. And so bottom line is, you know, I'm dealing with a lot of grief. And so this is a time that's important to me, and it's something that I'm working through. And let me show you how I do that. Right here, you're going to notice now, not all of these have it, but you see this little, it's like a yin yang symbol, and it's got the little yoga person kind of in the middle, the balance person. These are actually exercises. That's right, exercises for the lungs. Isn't that neat? So you can actually, they're called Qigong. So any one of these that you see that little symbol, you have an exercise for. Yeah, there's a few that we don't have the symbol for, but focus on the ones that we do. And when you click on that, that's actually going to tell you a little bit more about what this, you know, disorder means. It's going to give you a goofy picture. Don't laugh. I did not do these pictures. One of my buddies did though. And so, but it's going to give you these exercises that you can actually strengthen and work on your lungs. So I don't know about you guys, but I think that's some pretty cool material that we're giving you. And then of course, when you click on PM, you got a whole other set of organs. You know, if you're 3 to 5 o'clock in the afternoon with a power drain, well, you've got some bladder stuff potentially going on. So, you know, this is where you can learn more details on that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get out of here and attempt to find my way back to my presentation. And I thought I knew how to do that. Let's see here. There we go. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about some other things that might be helpful for you on the anxiety front. So, you know, again, from traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, there's a lot of other healing methods out there, and a lot of strains of herbs and remedies that lend themselves to be able to be consumed in the form of tea, which is really nice. Tea leaves have been broadly acknowledged around the world is a super effective natural remedy for fighting signs of stress and anxiety. And it's just a beautiful treatment against those kind of symptoms. And you can feel it almost immediately. So, some of these you've probably heard of, maybe chamomile. That is a wonderful tea. And it's something that's, there's really no toxic fallout to it. That's what's nice about it. It's just very calming and supporting. And also lavender, also very good, having healing and soothing, qualities about it. And so you can put these kind of things in your drinking water, infuse your drinking water with it. And these leaves can have almost an immediate and lasting effect on anxiety. So just wanted to share, a few of those details. And when you're working like on chamomile preparations, a couple other things to keep in mind. There's more than one ailment that chamomile can often support. A few of them are hay fever, inflammation, muscle spasms, menstrual disorders, insomnia, ulcers, wounds, gastrointestinal disorders, and even hemorrhoids, rheumatic pain, different things like that. So many opportunities with our chamomile option here. And then let's, of course, we're going to start moving into, we'll talk a little bit about peppermint. And, it's another readily available herb. We're going to talk about it as an essential oil as well. But it really lends itself to soothe the effects for stress and anxiety. And, it can come in the form of an herb, which I'm going to talk about now. And then in a moment, I'll talk about it in the form of an oil, because, all of these plants can go kind of either way. It just depends on how the distillation process happens. Now, when you actually consume peppermint tea, it is so great before bedtime. I don't know if any of you do that. I love peppermint tea before bed. It's so calming to the nervous system in general. It can actually help with sleep. And one of the things that people don't realize is that peppermint has menthol in it. And that menthol base is actually a muscle relaxant. So, if you're somebody who has a lot of, movement and, jerking throughout the night, from pain or things like that, muscle relaxant like this might be really helpful for you. And, teas like peppermint, chamomile, lavender, they don't have caffeine in it. And we talked about that already, right? So that can be real helpful, again, for soothing. And then some people know this, especially if you're familiar with essential oils in our world, but peppermint's also really helpful for digestion. It can also support people with headaches. And it just has an overall cooling effect within the body. And I mean that from a Chinese medicine perspective, not necessarily chilling you like the outside temperature. But it actually counteracts the emotion of fear associated with panic attacks. And again, that's that Chinese medicine perspective there. So peppermint has a lot of opportunities for it as well. Natural energizer as well. Promotes clear skin and sinuses, and all of that aids in anxiety relief there. So let's talk about environment. Wow, environment's a big one, and it could look a lot of ways, indoor and outdoor. I'm gonna let you know about a link that is on the front page of our website, our homepage. It's called, again, accesscompletewellness.com. You will get these links. It is called, Is Your Environment Making You Ill? And it's actually the epigenetic factor. That will teach you a lot about epigenetics and how things, in your home, things in your work environment, where you live, where you work, the people you surround yourself with, all of that is super, super important and a contributing factor to heightened levels of anxiety. So, the trouble is, that a lot of people who struggle with anxiety actually neglect to consider their direct environment as a realistic factor to their suffering. And so it becomes easy to blame yourself as opposed to the actual external contributing factors. And there's more to this. I mean, there's a lot more to this environment thing. Some of you may work where there's a lot of electromagnetic fields, and that will affect you from an anxiety perspective. This is what I mean by environment. Some of you may work in an environment that maybe there's a lot of dust or mold in the walls, and you don't even know it. But yet, that when I go to this environment, I worked with a wonderful family. In their home, they were good, and then when they'd go to school, they weren't so good. And what we determined was, one, there was mold in the school, and that's a really big concern because that's not an easy nut to crack when you're trying to convince a school system that mold is dangerous. But Google it. There's all kinds of stuff about mold out there. So again, this is what I mean by environment. It also could be people, though. You can have toxic people in your life. So just know that when we talk about holistic healthcare methods, one of the things that folks like me will look at with you is, what are the effects of anxiety and what in your environment could be, like I wrote in my blog, making you ill. And so when we talk about that, it's important for us to then look at, okay, how can we adjust your environment, whether that is remove you from it or give you tools to help you negate what might be coming at you in that environment. So, big important takeaway from this, though, is that, external situations are going to impact our senses and our quality of being internally. And so that means our happiness and how we process it. So, for this reason, a lighter, brighter, cleaner, more open space environment, very, very helpful. Being outdoors, very, very helpful. And we have a bad habit in our country of not taking some of that time to get away from some of these more unpleasant scenarios. And so just wanted to share that with you, that environment's huge, and do not underestimate what that might look like. All right, so we're going to move into talking a little bit about essential oils. And, these are such a positive way to bring about a calm-inducing or anxiety-soothing home environment or work environment. I tell people who are in really toxic environments at work, there's a great essential oil called White Angelica, which is really good for negativity or negative people. Again, we use, by the way, Young Living essential oils. I do not promote inviting people to just go buy oils off the shelf at the store. And here's why. I know the quality of the Young Living oils and what they go through to make sure it's quality. And when you get oils, one thing to watch for, if you choose to buy oils at an environment or a store near you or something like that, a lot of times one of the things they're going to say on the bottle is not for internal use. Now, that's important, and most of you would think, well, right, I'm not going to drink it, so no big deal. But keep this in mind. Generally, what most people do is encourage essential oil usage in a diffuser, which means it goes out into the air in extremely small molecules. And so just FYI, those little tiny aromatic molecules are being breathed in by you. So therefore, they are now internal. So very, very important to make sure you're using a good quality oil. And one thing, by the way, those little tiny aromatic molecules, here's what's really key about this. These pass through the blood-brain barrier immediately. immediately. So when those diffusers are running, you're getting an almost instantaneous effect on the areas of the brain associated with stress, anxiety, panic, maybe even depression, right? So that's huge. Not everything can pass, you know, across that blood-brain barrier. So that's really important to know. And essential oils are super, super versatile. You know, you can use them a few different ways. And let me tell you a little bit about this. One way we use them in our practice is through a process called aroma freedom technique. And that is actually where we help you go through a process of neutralizing maybe a negative event or situation, and use the essential oils to actually help neutralize that, again, across that blood-brain barrier. So really fascinating thing. You can actually go to our website and search on aroma freedom technique. I think it's under our services as well, under Access Mind Body. A couple other ways you can use it. I mentioned inhaling. Well, I mentioned a diffuser, but you can actually put a drop of an essential oil in your hand. Put one drop or two and rub your hand like 3 times clockwise. And then inhale the essential oil. And just take a deep breath. Awesome way to get that in your system. And of course, you know, you can rub an oil directly on your temples. That's another great way. Or on your body or anywhere else you want your body to relax, right? Wrists or anywhere else. You know, you can use those essential oils on the go. For those of you who are traveling in traffic, here's a great tip. Take a cotton ball, and we're going to share with you a couple oils. The one I would recommend is Stress Away. You know, and what we do is we put a drop of that oil on a cotton ball, and you stick it in your air conditioning vent. And voila, you're getting this great smell coming through. And hopefully it's the right effect at the right time for you. So anyway, that's a great way to use it. Another way is in the shower. You know, you want to plug up the shower drain, but when you put a few drops there and let the steam just kind of come up and get all over you, that's another great way to use it. And then let me share with you a couple of our favorite oils that we would recommend. You know, lavender. Now, lavender I use for sleep. So this is not one I would necessarily use in traffic because I don't want to be sleeping. But here's, we have a couple of different ones. Lavender Vitality, that's actually one that we, that you can put in your water if you want. In fact, there's a couple options up there of as far as dropping it in your tea or lemonade to make a refreshing drink. And then another one I like a lot, Peace and Calming. Anytime you have an oil that sounds like a phrase, that's a blend oil. And so lavender, of course, sounds like a lavender plant because it's a single oil. Peace and Calming, you'll see here, has a lot of different oils mentioned. You know, you see those, tangerine, patchouli. That means that there's a lot of different oils that make that one up. This is an outstanding oil. I originally got involved with these oils for this oil right here to help one of my pets who needed calming on a more regular basis. And then Stress Away, though, is probably my all-time favorite. And that's the one I mentioned is probably a great one for the car, especially if you're in traffic. I am a huge vanilla fan, and this one has vanilla. And I took a bath in this even before this webinar. I've got it right here. In fact, boy, if you've got some of your oils there right now, whew, yeah. I wish I had like scratch and sniff screens on these webinars, so then you guys could, you know, scratch the screen and smell it. But anyway, moving right along. Oh, right. Oh, happy day. How could I forget? So let me let you know another freebie. We have a free class. It's 21 days, and it's an email class to teach you about essential oils. And so want you to know that if you would like to participate in that, please feel free to email us. We're going to give you an email at the end on the last slide. Email us if you want to be part of that, or I guess you could chat it in or something. just give us your email. And then we will make sure that we send you out that 21-day class. And why am I bringing up Oh Happy Day? Because we send out a newsletter as well on essential oils. I don't know if it's once or twice a month, something like that. And this was one of last month's recipes. So we will give you essential oil recipes. And I thought, well, this has got to be a great one for this presentation on this topic. So 3 drops of Stress Away, 2 drops of peppermint, 3 drops of lemon. And I personally put that in a diffuser. I think that's a great way to do it, to just create an amazing smell. Aroma. Activity. Well, of course. Along with diet, of course, a healthy mind is what's gonna go with it is activity. And you know, you can't expect me to be a holistic health specialist and not mention this, right? I mean, I would be remiss. There is just way too much research that's demonstrating that activity is super, super important for mind and body health, of course. And so one of the things I want to share with you is this. You know, exercise it's thought to be one of those most invigorating and effective ways to combat anxiety, stress, depression, because one of the things it does is it produces endorphins, and that's what, you know, helps things feel better. And so even if it's just a 10-minute walk, it will have a similar effect to like taking an aspirin for a headache. You know, so it's really been, you know, shown and proven scientifically. There's no reason not to do it. Now, I get that maybe some of you out there have some pain. You know, pain is not the topic of today's webinar, but I will reference, you know, there are several tools we use in our practice. Body Talk is one of them. We also use a program now called Z Health, where working to help your brain manage pain. So if you've got any of that going on and that's why your activity levels aren't so great, you know, reach out to us. Maybe we can offer some helpful suggestions for you. And so regardless of maybe whether it's yoga, running, climbing, swimming, weightlifting, or hiking, all of these help the body have movement. And that is super, super important for our brains. So we're going to send you a bunch of studies to show how exercise is so helpful. Boy, oh boy, I told you we'd talk about gut-brain health. Now, I might not have said it that way, but it was when I talked about the B vitamins. So there is such a huge connection on this, and I am so grateful that the medical doctors now have the research they need to start understanding this, because this is huge, and it's been huge for a long time, like since time began. But unfortunately, it wasn't always understood. So again, if you've ever had indigestion, you know that can be uncomfortable. It can be stress-inducing, and it can keep you from being capable of focusing on a task. It can make you irritable and anxious. And so, you know, these kind of things are important. And imagine if this happened to you every day after every meal. Maybe some of you are saying, yeah, that is me, right? That's a horrible state to be in. And so, you know, there are theories that and actually there's science proving this now. It's all about microbiomes, but that the gut bacteria is intricately linked to our brain via the nervous system, the spinal cord, hormones, and the immune systems. All those systems coming together again. So when if you try to deal with the body, again, not holistically, but just, oh, let's just deal with digestion and not think about all the other aspects, or let's just deal with anxiety in the brain and not all the other aspects of the body, you really don't get a full picture. And so there's a nerve called the vagus nerve, and it is a main communicator between, you know, the nervous system, the spinal cord, the hormones, and it helps with the transmission of neurotransmitters from the base of the spine. And it goes all the way, down the spine, the gut, all the way up. And it is phenomenal to get that synced up and working. And so, one of the ways we do it in my practice is we do it through body talk. There's a lot of hormone balancing that we can do on the hormones of the gut, also the hormones of the brain, and also neurotransmitter balancing. And so I mentioned the microbiome earlier. On our website homepage, there is a microbiome blog on the homepage. It's called "Why Does a Microbiome Matter to Me?" A microbiome is this: it's the ecology of a body part. So in this case, it's the gut. It's the balance between the good bacteria and the bad bacteria, the fungus, viral, all those different things, parasites. It's got to be. It's a little community, and it's got to all get along. And if it's not getting along, you're going to have gut issues. So I encourage you to check out that article on my website. There's more than one microbiome. There's oral microbiomes. So if you have dental issues, there's respiratory, there's skin, you name it. There's about 7 that they found so far. I think there's more, but anyway, so I'd encourage you to check that out. And then also, if you're needing some help with gut, keeping your gut, getting it back in order. One of the things we do offer is a 10-day digestion cleanse. Yep, only 10 days. We will request that you modify your eating for that time frame. But it's a nice way to kind of start to move it in the right direction and to show you what life might look like if digestion worked better. And part of that would be, of course, that nutrition assessment. That's got to be part of any supplementation that we would work with you on, so we can get a good snapshot of what's happening in your world. Wow, flow state. This is a really interesting topic. This is kind of a new term, but the reality is this is not new. This has been around since humans have been creating and focusing in the world. So flow state is very important, and what it is it's basically having yourself being in a state of intense, creative, and productive focus. And it's such a manner. I kind of liken it to like when you're in the zone, like in sports. You're being so creative, you're so focused that you might forget to come up for air. You're just really on a task, and it's such an important thing because, the reality is that a lot of people who suffer from anxiety are actually people who are incredibly creative. And when you get out of your flow state, when you get out of that state of being able to concentrate, being able to flow in your gifts, flow in your creativity, it actually creates, an imbalance and allowing you to be you. Which is actually, being creative allows you to have an anxiety relief or release valve, so to speak. So oftentimes people who aren't able to be in that mode, maybe you're interrupted. And let me tell you, that can happen. So let's say you're trying to be creative with whatever it is that you do, and you've got your telephone ringing, or you've got your cell phone ringing, or you've got your email dinging, or you've got whatever going on, that disrupts this flow, this opportunity for peace. And so, and in fact, I'm going to mention, we're going to be doing a live class for those of you in the Dallas-Fort Worth area next month, May. I think it's the 16th. Don't have a calendar in front of me. And I'll have the date at the end, but it's called Digital Dementia. Yeah. It's going to be a super powerful class. It absolutely requires registration in advance. They're going to actually serve some appetizers, and they're going to be good appetizers. And so I would encourage you to sign up because space will be limited for this event. And it will be our only event at this point on digital dementia. We may have some future ones, but at this point, this is the one we're focused on. So I encourage you to check that out, because that's going to have a lot to do with how is technology disrupting our brains in many ways. So a couple ways to find your flow. Let's talk about that. One is, reading a book, just simple reading of a book and kind of getting away from screen time is an important option there, because we're not talking today about how technology really impacts our brain, but it does really impact our brain. And so it's important to be able to focus and flow and engage in some activities that aren't so distracting. And so another thing I'd ask you to do is, when you do find yourself, another way to look at this flow state and what is your best way to be in your flow. Notice times in your life or day when you feel really focused and productive. And when those opportunities come up, I would ask you to take a few notes. Again, it's all about awareness, right? So what are you doing when you feel real productive? Who are you with when you feel real productive? Or what environment are you in? What's your activity level like? And by the way, what have you been eating shortly after the time you feel real productive? So a lot of these are ways that you can help find your flow state, and also ways that can help you better manage that overall mood and anxiety level. So important stuff here on this flow information. We're going to again send you some links on that. And next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you a video. And this is a way that we help manage different stressors in our practice. And it's a process known as, I call it TIPI, but it's TP. It's French. And let me just play the video so you can watch this for a moment and learn a little bit about ways that we can work to help you with some regulation as needed. Okay, I thought I was, whoops, that wasn't right. Hey, okay, wait, technology. Okay, just a moment. I'm going to try to understand this. Worked earlier in our test. All right, hang on. Well, we're gonna go the old-fashioned way, and we're gonna find it this way. So I'm not sure why that suddenly didn't want to work for me. All righty. Here we go. Okay, where there's a will, there's a way, right? Here we go.
Resolving emotional difficulties with the TP technique. TIPI stands for, in French, Technique for the Sensory Identification of Subconscious Fears. It's a method that resolves emotions, such as depression, anxiety, phobias, PTSD, and jealousy. Basically, all these emotions that can make us aggressive, want to run away, freeze us to the point that we can't take action, or push us to overpower others.
It's my way or the highway, buddy.
Even when we can control our emotional reactions, our bodies continue to experience their effects through physical attentions, whether we are aware of it or not. What is TP? TP is a technique that permanently resets our disruptive emotional responses, so we can experience more emotional freedom. This technique allows our brain to process information that was originally blocked, information that had triggered a recurrent emotional difficulty.
Oh, hey. So TP is magical, right?
Nah, just natural. The technique was created in France by Luc Nicon. It's been tested in multiple social studies since. TP is currently used by over hundreds of people within helping professions all over Europe. How does TP work? The client is asked to remember a specific memory that had brought up an emotional experience.
Close your eyes. Okay.
It is then that they will immediately feel a set of physical sensations. The study on TP clearly shows that the sensations we are feeling during emotion create a clear and direct path to the origin of this emotion. We will use these sensations naturally generated by the sensory memory to reach the root of the emotion. Doing so, we regulate permanently the disruptive emotional response.
Open your eyes. Okay.
And guess what? There's no emotional resurfacing during or after a session. Sessions can be done in person, by phone, or by Skype. One single session is typically enough to permanently treat an emotional difficulty.
All righty, so that was pretty neat. We do that in our practice here, and it's something that we can assist you with as needed. I'm going to move on now to, we're almost done our webinar for the evening. Yoga and meditation, another phenomenal way to improve and assist in accessing that flow state that we talked about a moment ago. And, you know, by consistently engaging our body and our mind into a state of internal focus and concentration in the form of the physical postures that are used in yoga, or even in mindful breathing techniques, in helping to direct awareness to your thoughts and emotions as they arise, which would be like the meditation piece. All of that can begin to help you access a state of mind-body harmony and awareness. This focus and awareness, when it's sustained over a period of time, it actually, you know, ultimately it's a prime example of that flow state. And so yoga and meditation are hugely beneficial in combating symptoms for anxiety and stress. A lot of research has been done on this specifically. And, you know, by promoting a sense of ease and well-being within our body and our mind, you know, yoga and meditation can help succeed in reducing that intensity of cortisol that we talked about, that stress hormone, and other, you know, anxiety-related hormones. So it kind of gives us some tools to help use against the onset of future struggles. So I think one of the things you may find is that a lot of our Western yoga, it's certainly becoming more popular. It does focus quite a bit on the physical. I would encourage you to identify where you can learn a little bit more about the mind aspect of it and that mental fitness. We are part of a network of practitioners. We do have a yoga practitioner we can recommend. I think it's a little further in like the Dallas area, but if you're interested, you can certainly reach out to us and we can share that with you. And then again, we're going to send you some more information in our links on how yoga helps to manage those kind of lifestyle changes. So we are almost finished. One of the things that I'd like you to take note of right now is how you're feeling. You know, maybe chat into us, you know, what you're feeling, or even what might you try based on some of the things that we've shared. Are there some ideas that you might try to implement, you know, tonight or tomorrow to move us, you know, move you into a more balanced state? And we're going to get to our questions, but before we start that process, I want to share with you next month's webinar. Again, it's free. Take the toxic out of cleaning. You can register for this at accesscompletewellness.com. We've got that upcoming events, you know, /upcoming-events, but you can also just go to accesscompletewellness.com homepage, scroll down, and all of our classes for the rest of the year are listed out there. And then I cannot encourage you enough that if you would like to be part of this digital dementia class, let me explain what this is about. This class is not about if you have dementia or not. This class is about the concern that practitioners are starting to have about how technology is impacting our brains by the posture that we're using and electromagnetic fields, etc. So the purpose behind this class is basically, if you're an office worker, you should feel free to invite your friends. This is not exclusive to our practice only. We would like you to invite your friends. This is for anyone in an office setting using technology, using computers, iPads, phones especially. What we're going to teach is a couple of things to help with posture, and maybe even give you some tools to help, eyes and things like that, because they are really strained. And when eyes are strained and posture is strained, all of that stresses the brain. And it starts to lead to the more serious conditions of dementia and Alzheimer's. And I'm just going to let you know right now, I recently became aware of a 54-year-old who was moved into a memory care community in the last month, an executive. So what I'm saying is, there's some serious concern around the stress levels that these folks are having, and please invite your coworkers. This isn't just about you. We care about you, but even if you can't make it, this class will not be recorded, by the way, the live class. So if you can't make it, sorry. We do have a lot of people interested in it, so I'm sure there'll be another opportunity that they may open it up to the public, but we can't encourage you enough to be there. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to move on to, I'm going to show you this slide. This is going to be up there for you to take a look at a couple of things. One, our website. Two, want you to be able to see how to email us if you have additional questions. And then, of course, our phone number. Now, I think we've got some things in the chat. I'm going to go out there and see what I can find. And